that professionals make mistakes too. So I made a real big boo-boo on here. It may be hard to see. This red doesn't really photograph well. It photographs about as well as black. But hopefully you can see right here is where the curve occurs, and that's how I sewed this to roll like this. But that's not right, because the real roll line is like this. But look what happens. You have to look carefully. There's a big bend right here. That's where I sewed the roll line. The roll line needs to be here. So it's worth it to me to take this out and to fix it, because it'll be so much prettier. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to re-tack this down. And through the power of video, I can do this in about 5 minutes, because it's actually going to take me longer, but this way you get to see the results quicker. I've threaded a needle. I don't... So I'm going to go back in here and sew this up and make this really a lot prettier than what it was before. So what I'm going to do through the power of magic is I'm going to skip through some of this. Right now what I'm doing is I'm tacking down the stay tape. And the reason why I'm tacking down the stay tape is because I may need to move it, I may need to tighten it, I may need to do a couple of things to it after we have all the pad stitching in, and I want it tacked in here, but I don't want it sewn to the canvas nor the fabric. Okay, so I'm about to come to the end here. This makes it a little bit easier than if I'm doing it. I would not sew these pieces all together. I would do this first and then sew the pieces all together. That's normally how you do it. I'm coming back in and doing this over again because I got the placement of the roll line wrong, and I have to fix it. But what I'm doing is I'm catching underneath here just a little tiny bit to attach the canvas to the fashion fabric, but I'm just looping over the stay, the tape. I'm not sewing the tape in, but I am anchoring where my roll line is. So what I want to do is I want to come all the way down here to the bottom, and the nice thing, about not catching this is that if I have a buckle here, which I probably will, I can just pull it up at the top and it'll come right out. I've waxed my thread and I'm at the end. That's where I'm going to stop for right now. Okay, now then I'm going to put in pad stitching, and you can see that I've already got a little bit of a curve of where it was before. Now I hope you watched me do that, because I was keeping the fabric flat while I was doing that. And there we are. That looks much better now. I wasn't curving it because I don't want this to curve. I want it to curve this way, like that. I want it to curve like that. I don't want it to curve like this. So now I'm going to roll it over my finger like this. And the way I recommend doing this is you stick your needle in perpendicular, or even like this, barely tick the fabric underneath. See, I just barely ticked it right there. And have a stitch. These stitches need to be close together. I've got way too much stuff underneath there that's going to get caught. This is kind of cumbersome when you have everything all together here. And this is the traditional way you do pad stitching. But I will warn you I can feel that I'm moving the canvas that way every time I take a stitch here. And I know I'm sewing in a pucker every time I sew, every time I stitch here. That may be kind of hard to get. So what I'm going to recommend you do is I'm going to recommend you make a fold along here like this, and that you pin so that you fold across here, and all across the top of this roll right here you're going to make little itsy bitsy teensy weensy stitches. And this is the best way I have found to teach a roll or a pad stitch. Here, I'll do it like this. When we get up here to the top, I may not be able to put a pin in there. So that, see, I've got a roll all across that line. Now I'm going to take it, and I have been used to put my finger underneath, and I'm just going to take a little tiny stitch right there. But you remember, you have to grab the fashion fabric underneath here. If you feel like you're not grabbing it, then you're not getting it. The other bad thing about doing it this way is that your stitches on the underside are going to be larger. They're not going to be quite as fine. But I still want you to do this. And the reason I want you to do this is because you're going to get the idea of what it does. And getting the idea of it at least gives you a start toward what you're trying to do, which is you're manipulating the fabric to roll and curve in such a way that's at the place where you want it. Now, after I do this first row here, yeah, came out. I knew it was about to come out. Okay, let's take our pins out and see what's happened here. Okay, you can see we've sewed in a big bump right there. See, that's exactly what you want. See how puckery that is? Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to make another row right next to that. We're going to fold it down like this. And what you do is you work back and forth. And I like to get these rows fairly close together. And the reason is because you want this curve to be real strong here, right next to the roll line, because you want it to fold. You want it to fold real flat against each other. And Ponte doesn't press very well. It doesn't press in anything crisp. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue down the other side. Okay, now you can see we've got a real strong curve in there. See, we've got a good bump. That's telling we want a curve like that. So that's going to fold back nicely. This is too much, I'll be honest with you. But what it does is it gives you the feel of how to do this. I'm going to come back in and take this out and do it the way I normally do it, which is I roll it over my finger. And it'll be much gentler. But what I want you to do is I want you to take some horsehair canvas, and I want you to fold it like this, and I want you to sew it up, because you're going to get the idea of what a pad stitch is supposed to look like. Okay, now I have a nice roll that I like. And here's what that looks like. Let's just tuck this back in here so you can see just the little bit we've done and how much prettier this is going to roll. Now our roll lines are matching, and see that bump right there? That's where we want it. Here is where it was. Now here is where it is, so that you can see we're matching. This is where the old one was. And by the way, I'll press that and that'll come out beautifully. So now what we do is at an angle, we work toward this point. So I'm just going to work like this. I'm still going to roll it, but it's going to be not quite as big a roll, not quite as many stitches, so that it'll curve like this instead of, it'll curve like this instead of curving like that. Well, you may not be able to see this, but I can feel this. This lays flatly, it lays smooth in there. It's really nice. It's nice and flat and smooth. This is contrived and bunchy and pokey. And see, I don't have anything pokey showing up here at all because I've got everything all, I've got my roll line all at the same point right there. And notice how gracefully that falls. That's just beautiful. This is still, this is all bunchy up in there. It's all still a mess. So I'll take that out and redo that again. But already I'm elated with how lovely this looks.